Hi, my name is Luc Mayrand, and today we're going to be drawing a pirate ship. It's a simple setup that has a few stories. It has a pirate ship, it has a mysterious monster under the ocean, including some treasures, secret caves, so that's pretty cool. But afterwards, I'm going to do a larger drawing where I expand the stories and how, I would use this to build up more stories, and that way you can do the same thing. You can add your stories and keep going and all across and make a giant map full of tales. All right, so let's get going. What are you going to need for this project? We're going to need some paper. So I have a really large piece of paper here, which is great, but you can use 8.5 by 11 copy paper, whatever's in the printer, if you have one at home, or you can use butcher paper. The bigger the sheet, the more you can put stories on it. I love that. You'll need a pencil. If it has an eraser, great. If it doesn't, then you need a separate eraser. You need pen or a ballpoint pen. I really like drawing with ballpoint, but pens are great. Then you'll need a ruler. I like to use a ruler. There's not very many straight lines in this drawing, but it's always nicer when the straight lines are straight, so use that. And then some color markers or crayons or pencils, something to add color to your drawing. And that's what you'll need. So what we're going to start by doing first is we're going to set where the water is. And the water, it's about 1/3 of the way up the page, roughly. If you do this, this is roughly 1/3, maybe just a little higher than 1/3. And then we're also going to divide the page in thirds this way. And it's not because we're going to use those markers exactly, but it gives us kind of an idea of how to do it, where to set things. We're going to set the front of the ship a little bit short of that second third here, and the back of the ship a little bit short of that first third also. And we're going to draw the line of the bottom of the boat, the keel, where that is. And then the top of the ship is going to be somewhere around here. Right, so you have a box that's about 2 to 1, twice as wide as it's tall. Then we're going to just put a few lines. To me, this is an important line. This is the back of the ship, the way it goes up. That's pretty important because once you do that, then you can put the line that goes from the front of the ship and back here. Right, and I'm kind of going a little bit further forward here because otherwise it looks a little short. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add that little house. So this is the captain's quarters here, and I'm going to start getting into this right away with this angle. And what's really cool about ships that were built to go on the ocean is that there's almost nothing straight. It's all kind of curving in one direction or another or both, and that can be really fun to see and to draw. And then when you walk on a ship, even the deck is not straight. So that's interesting. That's going to be the back window here. There we go. 2 of them. And then we're going to have some mullions across. So we're just going to do, because we're in pencil, we can rough these things out, and it's it's a little less scary than by doing it with a pen. So you can kind of sort of prepare yourself for where the lines are going to go. All right, so there we go. So that gives me something to work with. It's kind of an anchor here. Now these boats, they have a long curve that goes across here. So this is going to be an important curve. Actually, let's do the little house here while we're at it. This is the top, the roof of that. And then I'm going to turn the page to help me do this line, because it's going to go from the bottom of the house across the way like that. So it comes up not quite to the top of where it was. And then actually, I made a mistake. This is not where that line goes. This line goes to there. And this line goes below, a bit lower. Right? They go together. And that's going to be the line in between which, those 2 lines, that's where the cannons are going to be. So that's the curve of your deck here. And you can make that very pronounced, or you can make it a little bit less. Either way is fine. And then we're going to draw the bowsprit. Now the bowsprit, I don't have to use a straight edge, but since we have it, we'll do that. And it pitches a little bit more steep than the deck, right? And then we're going to draw another straight line here. And that line is going to be what we use to make the support for the bowsprit. And that support goes from here to here, and then there's 2 more lines like that connecting. And that's a decorative piece, but it's holding the bowsprit in place like that. So that's called a bowsprit, that little mast that's in front, horizontal or angled. So then what we need to do is we need to set the space where our captain is going to be, which is the stern castle in the back of the ship here. This whole piece kind of sticks out there. It's really cool. It's all angled, pretty steep. In fact, we can angle this even more. There we go. Even more. There we go. All these lines are going to be angled further. This goes there. Again, I really love that about ships, that they're just, you know, so organic shaped and kind of just really force things to be interesting there. All right, so that's where that goes. And our captain is going to be up on here somewhere. Right, and I'm going to block him in just because I want to make sure I leave enough space for him when I put the rest of the stuff in there. I might actually move him over a little bit. Yeah, I think I need to. Okay, and then we can put the rear mast, which is going to be really tall and angled back here. It's really cool. Love that. In fact, we can follow this angle here, maybe. There we go. And then the center mast is going to be kind of in the middle of the ship here. So if the ship's there and this goes here, that's going to go straight up here. And then we're going to have the front mast. And the front mast is going to be in this area that has another little raised bit, the forecastle, as they say, and that's up here. And sometimes the masts weren't parallel. They didn't have to be. So sometimes the front mast would tilt a little bit forward, and the rear mast would tilt a little bit back, or a lot back. And then now we can start putting the sails on the ship. Now, I want to make sure there's room enough for the flag, so I'm going to start by placing the flag at the top here, and placing a flag on this one as well, so that there's enough room. And then we can start to put things like the sails below that. Now there's a little crow's nest at the top. I think that's cool. Must be kind of scary to be way up on top of, you know, something like that, just so high up in the air. When the ship is listing, you know, going sideways in the water and everything, it must be pretty exciting. Maybe actually terrifying. Then I'm going to put the sails like this, you know, here, and come down roughly here. This one, come down roughly here. The sails on the front mast are a little bit smaller than the sails on the main mast. And I'm just kind of roughing those in right now. Make sure that my head doesn't get into the camera field. All right, so that comes down here, and here, and then here, and here. Yeah, that's good enough. And then there's going to be a little piece on each mast here. I'm just roughing it as a rectangle. And that's going to be where the ratlines attach. And the ratlines, they call them that because the people that would scurry up and down to go man all the sails were called sometimes rats. And that's how people would get up there. So the plates for the ratlines are just below the top of this here, so we have room for some decorations here, right? So we're going to have some decorations in this area. And then over here, far enough to the side, and then that goes up here, so it's going to go 1, 2, 3, and the same thing here. 1, 2, 3. And then when we're doing it with ink, we can get them a little closer. So you see, that leaves enough room for my captain here. And he's probably going to have his arm up, you know, with his sword. I'm using a pencil that's a little bit darker than usual here, just so that we can actually see, you know, on the camera what things look like. His hands here. And so now we can put this rear sail over the captain, because the thing is I didn't want to put the sail in and not have enough room for him. So this is a lateen sail. It's that's what it's called, because it's basically like a triangle, or like a, sometimes the front end is actually wider, but that sail goes in the back here. And the ships would have these combinations of sails that were sometimes, you know, rectangular, triangular, different shapes, because they all work differently in different kinds of wind. And that's what you need, right? You need to be able to travel with different kind of wind hitting. Because this is a pirate ship, you know, it's got decorations on it, but they are decorations from the previous owners, we'll just say that kindly, right? Pirates didn't have ships built for them, they stole them. And so, you know, what you saw there was what the previous, you know, ship owner, the ship builder, usually typically had, you know, made for decorations. So there's like big swirls, always decorative, like vines that connect things. Very pretty. And you know, the pirates would steal a ship and then, you know, take it for themselves and just, you know, keep it. And then there's usually a big decorative piece underneath that, you know, supporting that. So this ship has some features of several ships. Some parts of it look like the ship in the ride at Disneyland. At the entrance of the town. Some parts of the ship also will look like, the sails will look more like a ship that's at Disneyland Paris, which has striped sails. And some of it will just be made up because we're having fun with it right now. So then these are the top ropes that link some of these things together. This rope's going to come down here, but this ship is going to have a front sail that's up on the front mast on the bowsprit here. So not all ships have that, but this one has it, and it's really cool. It's like a tiny sail that just does a little bit of a job of pushing up in front. And then these two are going to have little narrow flags, not the full width. And then so this comes down here. So that's pretty neat. I like that. I'm not sure if that's going to leave enough room for palm trees, but we'll work something out. Okay, and I like the idea this ship is going to have a little dinghy. So if I put the water here, this level, if this is our water, then we'll have a dinghy that's attached here. And it's going to be a flat bottom, simple thing. And in it, I was thinking it'd be fun if there was like a shorten it, because I want to keep room for something there. You'll see in a minute. So here, and I want the idea of a pirate who's having a nap in there. His head kind of leaning forward, hat, you know, leaning forward and just in his knees up. There you go. Having a little nap where he can be alone and quiet, away from the hubbub of the ship. All right, so there's our ship. It's going to have anchors, and I'll try and remember to do that when we get there. Oh, the Canon Ports. Well, the Canon Ports, you can put as few or as many as you like, right? So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3. Those are the closing ports, or what do you call those? They're like little flaps that go down over the opening of the cannon to prevent seawater from getting in and stuff. And so they're sitting here. Like that. I put 5. You can put as many as you like. Some of these ships would have 28, 30. This is going to be the beach. It's going to be the beach here. We're going to have a couple pirates on the beach, and that's going to come down, and then come down pretty deep, pretty quick. But it's going to go back up a little bit just because that makes the composition, but not so high that the boat would run into it, right? So that's going to be over here. I love the idea that, you know, pirates, they were always looking for treasure. There are all the legends of the pirates doing their you know, secret plans to hide treasure and so forth. And so there was always the play of like, oh, trying to find the lost treasure of so-and-so or going somewhere, and kind of deciphering the code and finding out, you know, what was the mystery behind it. Well, I love the idea that these guys are here. They parked and just kind of found this tiny island, just barely bigger than this here. Nobody lives here and they don't expect to find anything. But what if actually there was some treasure here on the bottom that had been left, you know, maybe dropped by somebody at some point, and they just don't even know about it? I think that's kind of funny. They're sitting right over it and probably talking about treasure the whole time, but they forget that, like, it could be right below them. And of course, that probably would occur to them, but it would also occur to them that the sea is a place where there's all kinds of crazy monsters and is super dangerous, and you would never go to the bottom of the ocean to look for the treasure because nobody could hold their breath that long. So this is a treasure box, and there's going to be like a little, you know, a little crown in there. But you can draw a treasure box if this is too much to do, you know, a little bit of perspective there. You can just draw it as a box with a round top like that and a handle, and that's fine. And that's what I'm going to do on this one here. So it doesn't need to be complicated. You could also open it, just have it open and then have some treasure bulging out of it. But what I really want to do when I talk about the stories is the fact that there's treasure here, but there's also a lot of other mysteries underwater, and I really want to have a giant octopus that they didn't even know that they were driving right over it. And it's like, oh my God, if only they knew. This octopus is underwater. So I start with an oval for the head here. It's going to kind of sit here. And then I'm going to just, you know, because it doesn't have to be complicated, I'm just going to take, tentacles are like long curly cues. So this one comes over here and it's kind of watching over the treasure, you know, almost touching it. And then comes back. And then there'll be another one that's almost touching the ship. I love that, the idea that this thing is almost touching the ship, kind of like, you know, I'm not liking you parking over my head like this. This is my bay. This is my ocean. What are you doing here? So that's another one, and then we'll have a few others, you know. The octopus, the giant octopus, is looking up, not happy, right? So that's its eyes just kind of looking up. And then we'll give it these eyes that are like staring, going, you know, I might just go up there and kind of show you something. Now, octopus don't have eyes that are round. They have their eyeballs are round, but their pupils are like this. It's really cool. But here I'm just going to make them round. So this comes up here, and then it'll actually come up and almost touch this guy here, like, almost like it's going to tap on his shoulder. Just because I think this giant octopus has a little bit of a sense of humor. Just thinking like, well, I wonder if I should remind this guy that, you know, the ocean still has a lot of mysteries. Another tentacle here, and then another one up there. Some of you will look at me and go, hey, this octopus only has 7 tentacles. What's wrong with that? Well, yes, he's special. So I'm going to put its little kind of siphon hole here. I'm not sure if all octopus have them, but it's a kind of an interesting feature. So there we go. So that's here. So now we have a scene under, you know, a scene that's under. Like everybody's kind of connected somehow. Captain is thinking, hey, I'm looking for treasure, but we're just pausing here. He's actually right over treasure. But the octopus is looking over the treasure and is kind of thinking of like, maybe should I take this trip, this boat down? I don't really like it here. This pirate's just kind of sleeping, kind of thinking, well, I've had enough of getting orders from the captain. Maybe I'll just go chill over here. But he doesn't know that the octopus might just be kind of waking him up soon. Now, what else could we add that would be a fun story here? Well, we got a beach. We're going to have a couple pirates on there. And then this beach is on a very small island, right? There's just, you know, probably a handful of cactus up here. There's going to be plants up in there. So I'm just kind of wreaking that as a little bubble. It's going to come down, and then we're going to put a space, you know, any shape you like, for a cave. This cave is going to be a place that these pirates don't know about, right? And the way to get into this cave, the only way you get into this cave is through a water tunnel here, like an underwater cave. I love that. It's like a big mystery, right? And maybe you can make your path into the cave any shape. It could be very challenging to get in there, right? You look down and oh, you don't know. This is just like a deep tube. You have to swim all that. Maybe this is just visible at low tide, right? You can just see it, but you still have to go through the water. And in here, there's going to be another treasure, because these pirates that are sitting there and just chilling, they don't even know about it, right? So this is going to come down, and we're going to have one pirate standing here, roughly like that. So just blocking the shape in the head. I'll make sure he's tall enough so we can have enough detail in there. This is not about making everything the right scale. And he's holding, what's your favorite food at Disneyland? A turkey leg, of course. So, because they took some turkey with them on the trip. And there's going to be a fire, right? So that's pretty easy. That's going to be just an X with some little blowy things on it. And then another pirate is sitting down, and that one's going to be a lady pirate. You know, there were very, very famous, very good pirates that were ladies. I don't know if they would want to be called ladies, but they were women at least, and they were tough. So Mary Read and Anne Bonny, those were tough pirates. They really knew what they were doing, and they were good. So it's going to be sitting there, and she's going to have long hair. This drawing is very small, so I can't put a lot of detail in there. But you know, we're just going to show enough. So while he's wearing a vest, she's wearing more of a closed thing, obviously. And it's just her hair, and maybe she's just having a nice drink. So she got a chalice or some kind of, goblet from somewhere, and that's what she's holding. All right. So we have enough stuff roughed in. We're just going to quickly put in, one of the palm trees here and a couple more palm trees leaning in. That's always cool. Big palm tree here, another palm tree head ball there. Actually, I'd like this to angle more. That's going to come up here like that. And that's our composition. So everything's here. Now we can start drawing with the pen. And you can start almost anywhere, but I like to start in the middle. I like to start with what's in the foreground usually, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to draw something and then find that, oh, I have something in front of it, and now I'm going to have to draw over it. So ideally, you would just start from what's in front. Actually, one helpful line, if I draw the octopus, is the water. So let's just start with the water here. Starts a little bit over and around the beach, and then we get like little wavelets. And those get longer, and then we have longer like swells, and ideally they'll be the same, but so then just going to come back and give these waves a little bit of shape by putting another tip next to each one there, and then this starts to just have a little bit of this kind of action there. All right, and that's our water. Don't need to make it more complicated. It's pretty cool. All right. Now our octopus. Well, let's start with the eyes and the face, because that's kind of you usually want to get that right. So we'll do that. Eyebrow. Go over. Now it can be almost any shape, right? But they don't have a skull, so you don't want to give it too much shape. It's kind of a floppy shape. And then the eye. Essentially, it's like no bones. The other one here. Okay, and then we'll do its siphon here. There you go. A little bit of dark just to make it seem like there's a hole in there. Okay, let's draw the treasure. All right, treasure's out here, so I put two lines when I can see the edges of something. So I see the top edge, the open edge, and this is the back of it. This is the inside curve. And then we go over here, draw two lines, and then I'm going to let this line stop so that I can put some necklaces and things coming down. And maybe there's another necklace that's just, you know, kind of making a nice little thing back up, and then the rest of the treasure box, this edge, this edge, this edge. There we go. And then that's, you know, little rocks and some seaweed and stuff. I think there's probably another kind of precious pot here, some kind of, you know, maybe a gold special vessel, expensive stuff that's just sitting there in the back. Another one that you're seeing front end here. Okay, so those are sitting on the sea bottom with some, you know, little green stuff. Okay, and then as we go up here, we'll do some little shelves, just because they'll give us a chance to put some little anemones, right? Stuff that's growing at the bottom of the ocean here. And how about kelp? Let's put some kelp while we're at it. Just kind of sort of letting them cross like that. And it's kind of hiding the treasure from people looking down this way. Don't think about it. Okay, so now we have the crown I mentioned here. Two parallel lines, two little waves, a little diamond. There we go. This, and then, you know, on each side. So if I'm going a little fast, it's because I don't want the video to be too long, but I also know that you guys can stop the video as often as you need to look and change and go back and kind of do it over if you need to, right? So that's why. If I seem like I'm rushing, well, I am. Okay, so that's inside. I'm putting some lines closer together because that makes it look like it rounds in like that. All right, let's go back and put some like splotches, some skin splotches on this old octopus that's been down there for a long time, right? That gives it a little character, right? And then a little bit of shape. I'm putting some lines here. I'll come back and do the suckers later. I like to change around the drawing. That keeps me interested. So that's kind of how I work. So then we have the beach. Now you saw I drew and I left some space because I'm drawing the beaches. The edge of the beach is behind this character, but I wanted to draw it now, so I kind of stopped it where the character is going to be. This is going to be the hole to the water cave. I love the idea that it's very challenging, and there's like little pieces of rock, and maybe there's even a few, you know, green things at the entrance. And you come up around and up, and finally you can come up into the cave. And those guys are sitting right next to it, and they don't even know about it. I think that's kind of funny. It's called irony. All right, so we're gonna put some cross-hatching here because that makes it look like the thing is kind of rounding like that also. Gives us a chance to put some texture on those tubes, so it has a chance to look like it's made out of you know, rock, or it has to be made of something solid because dirt would collapse. So it is some kind of rock substrate. Right? So that goes up here and up here, and then we have our water level and a few bubbles just to make you remember that's what it is. And then we're going to draw the outline of that cave, which is kind of tall. It may have actually a little hole somewhere in it where sunlight comes in, because that's how you see into the cave. Otherwise you'd have to take something to put a light, which would be very difficult if you have to go through a water cave. Or maybe there's another entrance. I love that. Maybe there's another entrance, and that's another secret of the island. So there's a sword lying down on the treasure. Maybe there's another one. And those people were kind of reckless because they left their swords with the sharp end pointing up. Probably unusual, but you know, no accounting for what people do when they're burying a treasure. They can just do whatever they want. All right, so we're going to put some more cross-hatching here for kind of the shape of the rock as, you know, it gets much darker as you get to the top, probably So that's why I'm kind of doing that here. And that allows me to hint that this area is darker, and then I'll use the marker to make it seem more so afterwards. A little bit of dark behind the swords. This corner of the cave is pretty dark. There's not much light gets there. And then yeah, we'll add a little bit more here, just so the top feels like it's a little bit different. All right. So there's a cave. A few little bits of rock there. That part's finished already. So that's cool. All right, so we've kind of done the part underwater except for the boat. And we're going to go to the boat after I do the dinghy. I kind of feel like doing the dinghy right now. Just there, we have that. It ends, maybe it has a small, you know, a small rudder, a hand rudder. And then this comes here. And then we got our pirate. That's his knees. Don't have to see his feet, but why not? And then that's his shoulders and his back, and then his head. Okay, so now we gotta be careful. This is tiny. So his hat is one of those hats that, you know, comes up in the back, and it's kind of over his eyes. And then that comes down here, and it's kind of dark where the hat is making a shadow. Then it's his hair. And that's close enough. You know, we could put a lot more work into it, but it would also be easy to make it really bad. And then here, this is how the line goes up to the main ship. All right, so let's start on the ship. So this is going to be interesting. There's a lot of stuff in here, but you'll see it's not so difficult. So we start with the same line we started before. This line, for some reason, this line seems really important to me in describing the balance in the back of the ship. And then we're going to draw the little house again. It goes up. We'll draw like 3 lines here and then 2 lines on top. And then and then this end closed, and then we have one. Actually, add another one here. That's the back of the ship. We have a little hat of the house. They called them stern castle. I mentioned that before. Stern castle and the forecastle or forecastle. So this is the back of the ship. Goes up. The lantern. The lantern is pretty easy. Just a little base, and it flares out. So even pirates, of course, they stole their boats, so the boats came with those lanterns. But he knew it was important to have those at night so that other people could see you, so they didn't run into you, for one thing. Rudder real quick here, there we go. So it's just a little flaring rectangle, and then put a little hinge piece. It's just 2 lines there, just because it looks like it connects better. Then we're going to draw the bottom line of the hull, right? So this comes kind of straightish, and then it starts to curl up. And that's that. Goes up in there, goes up in here. Now we're going to draw this piece. So straight, straight. And those lines are going to connect up here, right? So I'm going to connect that point to that point next to it, that point next to that, and then that point just in front of it. And then we'll put some little connecting pieces in between. This whole assembly, you know, is there to hold up the bowsprit and give a front to the ship. So they look very different. Sometimes you'd have a figurehead there. I didn't put one because it's a little too small to draw, but very interesting. The ships had all these different looks in front, and that made them very easy to identify, right? So this comes up here, this comes up here. Again, I gotta make sure I don't get my head in the picture. And then the front mast, the little mast, which is attached here with some kind of, you know, block. And then we're going to do the top of the sail, the boom here, and there's no boom at the bottom. And then this, and then they curve a little bit. We're not going to draw the ropes that hold up the sails because that's just too many ropes. but that's how it goes. Now, I'm going to fess up to cheating something big time here. And you'll see, when I show you, you'll lose all respect for me. Because these flags look like they're moving because the wind's hitting them this way. And these sails are kind of billowing the other way. I cheated. And why did I cheat? Well, just because I like the sails shaped like that. They could, they could be rolled up actually up there. That's what they would do when they're pulled up, in port someplace. But it's a lot less interesting to me. So I just figured I'll cheat, And that's another nice thing about doing drawings is it doesn't have to be reality. You kind of make it your own. That's what I'm hoping you do with these drawings is that, we're doing this right now, and then you're gonna, maybe do another one on your own afterwards, or do this one and change stuff along the way, and that's fine. That's exactly what you should do. This is your drawing. It's not, helping draw this because this is prepared so that we can do it together. But I'm hoping that you kind of take it and go your own way with it, because that's a lot more creative, right? There we go. So yes, the wind is in the wrong direction on these. You can keep that secret, I hope. Also, you wouldn't have the sails out there because the ship is anchored, right? And if the sails are pushing the ship in a particular direction, that's not good because you don't want it to move. All right, so there we go. So the middle here, a little trickier, right? So we have those very important lines that connect the back to the front. So we're going to do that first. So you see, I practice it by putting my pen over it and there, and that's kind of telling my hand where it's going to need to go. I go that, and connect, that, and connect. I'm going to do the same on this other line, which goes clear from here all the way to there, right? So this one goes here, and here, oops, and there we go. And then there's going to be another one there, the top of the forecastle or forecastle, top line, and then we're going to put that plaque or plate for the ratlines or ratlins. The other one's here, and then we can turn it back. So, those lines are helping connect the front and the back of the ship together. Now we're going to do the Canon Ports. We might as well. I'm going to do that upside down too, just because I think it's easier. You could use a ruler for that if you think that's going to make them look a little cleaner. And then in there, if you have something round that you can use to draw, like a little template, you can use that. I don't have one right now, so I'm just going to use this and eyeball it. So then the stern castle here, the raised part of the ship, that has a big curve like that, right? And then it goes straight back there. Sometimes it has another curve in it, but we're not going to do that. Just go straight back here, drop that line there. And now we can very lightly do some of these decorations. You don't need to go too heavy. It's very easy to kind of get lost in it. This marker tends to go a little heavy, so I have to be careful. And all that's giving me is just some shapes to put some gold on afterwards. It's not really meant to be like super complicated. There we go. I had to be quiet a little bit there just to pay attention to what I was doing. And there's going to be some more up here, kind of tiny, but very interesting. Okay, so we have most of the ship done. All right, so let's do the back mast. All right, we'll started just a little short of where the captain is. So there's room for his hand, for his arm, and then that's the back mast. Goes up, has its own little flag. And then
big sail back here. And then this goes over here, complete the triangle. And then what we're going to do to the sails is just suggest the same kind of the way I did the waves on the water. There's like these little shapes, and that's how the sail is attached to the boom, right? So, and then little tiebacks there. People who did that had very complicated knots. Those pirates really had to know how to tie some knots, that's for sure. So we're just going to indicate that real quick. So little wave, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line. And then another one here, 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 here. Straight line, straight line, straight line. All right. Now before I go to the captain, I just realized we could add a little bit of detail to the hull here, because this was all made out of curved planks of wood that would actually follow the shape. And just putting a little bit of detail in there will help to convey that the whole thing is rounded. So I'm just adding some little lines that are roughly, you know, at the same spacing to each other, that give the impression that these planks are going in curves like that. All right, and then I'm going to put just some little tick marks in there to indicate that the planks are staggered, because they don't want all the joints to be in the same place, right? And while we're at it, why not? We'll add a little barnacle or two, because under the water line, the ocean was constantly working to get the ships back, to capture it. So a barnacle is basically like an egg that you'd make in the morning, basically a wider area with a little circle in the middle. That's the way I draw it. Okay, the captain. All right, so now we're going to be a little bit careful, because we need to get the captain just right. Now he's going to have, let's go back and let's prepare him properly, so we make sure that we get it right. So it's going to be his body here, his arm going there, and a vest. Maybe his body's angled a little bit. There we go. Undershirt or something. Maybe he has a necklace, but let's not get too carried away. His head is going to be kind of squarish. We don't want to make it too complicated. He's going to have a bandana. So he's going to have a way you tie it. Of course, he's going to be unhappy. That's what. And then that's his eye patch. There we go. Close enough. So let's start with his vest. Comes down here because he's raising his arm, so it's pulling the vest away. And then same thing here, that side. And his arm. This doesn't need to be very exact, right? His hand, end of his sword, hilt of the sword, and there we go. So he's got a straight sword. Why not? And then undershirt, now the face. Come down pretty straight here. And we can give him a little beard and maybe some sideburns. And his mouth. Nose. And then cross this and this. And then the top, which is his bandana here. Okay, and then we need to give him another arm, right? Just because he has, and he's holding on to the side. And maybe this is a part, maybe this is not so much of an old vest, it's more something that has buttons, you know, a little fancier, more like maybe it wasn't a uniform. And these are the openings there. There we go. And then he's probably got a big belt buckle down there. There we go. All right, what else is missing here? Anything missing on the, oh yeah, the ratlins and the big ropes over everything. So the ratlins go from here to here, right? So it goes from here up to that. And then in front, the same thing from here. I'm going to put a double line underneath because it makes it look like it sticks out. There you go. And then this one goes from here to here, here to here, here to here. Right? And now we're going to put some cross lines here. This is how the sailors would get up into the sails to do all that work. Well, while we're at it, maybe we'll put an anchor that goes from back here, and it's going to go past and behind this guy. So maybe it goes here, here, here. And then rather than putting like big round things, I'm just going to do a zigzag along the way because I think that's kind of interesting. That's not really what an anchor line would look like, but it's a little bit less heavy than just making circles. And then the anchor is sitting in here, kind of like buried in the sand. And you know what an anchor looks like, right? It has pointy bits here, an arc, and it has a straight bit. This is where the chain connects, and then it has another crossbar. And that's just sitting, in the dirt here and holding the ship. And then there'll be another one here. So this one will come down and I guess this one's more straight. Comes out of a little port on the side here, and then this one will be mostly hidden. It'll be behind. So we'll just give it the crossbar, the top, and then you can just see the tip hanging there. Okay, and now we have to draw our pirates that are on the beach. Yeah, we can do that. We can do that first. So the fire is very easy. It's a little few black lines like that. This is the burnt wood. Does that, and then comes up just a few sweeps like that. We'll put a dot of orange, and that'll be enough to suggest that it's fire. Okay, so now we have rocks. The rocks make kind of this whole area of the place, right? Because that's why there's a cave behind it. So this is, she's kind of sitting inside of this hollow of rocks, and then the rocks continue maybe back here behind this pirate. And that goes up until there's plants. And then when there's plants, now you get up in here and you have some plants doing stuff here, plus. And out of those plants we have our palm trees. Go way up. I love drawing palm trees because they're just so simple and so, I don't know, they're dramatic. They really kind of make a composition. Up here. So one of them's like, the wind has blown it over. So now we're going to put some fronds on those palm trees. Simplest way is to make kind of like a frond that folds over, and then just put some leaves over it, and then you put a bunch of those together, and that's the shape of the tree, right? Goes down. And then just a few tick marks along the trunk to suggest that, the growth rings. When palm trees go up, they start small and then they lose their fronds, and every time they do, there's one more line. Put a little shade at the base as well, just because it helps to show where they are anchored. All right, I think we have almost everything here. A little bit of sand here. Dots indicate sand, kind of. Let's look at it carefully. Missing the ropes that tie the masts together. So there's one, and then here's another, and then here's the last. Now I like the idea that these pirates are they're very clean. So maybe they're actually like drying their socks in the rigging. I think that's kind of would seem like good habits, or at least good habits for keeping clean. I'm not sure about good habits to help the rigging. And then let's add just a few suckers on these. Right, so this comes around like that. Am I missing anything? Am I missing anything? I don't think so. I think it's oh well, he's sleeping, so I'm actually going to give him some little. He's catching some Z's, and there they are. All right, so then we erase. So a little trick on erasing: erase away from your hand, because if you're erasing towards your hand, you might wind up crinkling the paper. And that's very frustrating when you've put a lot of time into a nice drawing, and then you wind up wrecking it. So I would say, you know, erase away from your hand or erase between your fingers. That way there's less chance of damaging. I think we're going to be ready for color in a second. All right. Oh, well, maybe I'll add some clouds. Yeah, I can add some clouds here. And the clouds are going to be going kind of like a lazy breeze coming across here. And I like clouds that kind of sort of make like a big billowing, puffy shape. I really like those. It kind of suggests that the wind is coming across. You know, it's high, but it's a little breeze down where we are, but then where the clouds are, it's pushing a little harder, and it's kind of making those clouds travel across the sky. And a nice lazy clip. There we go. And then if you draw like the clouds big and then smaller and smaller, then it makes it kind of feel like they're trailing that way. Okay. I'm going to do one this way. The bottom of the cloud is pretty straight. As you get on top, kind of sort of add these kind of little bubbles. So now we're going to be ready for color.
My job at Walt Disney Imagineering is a portfolio creative executive. What does that mean? Well, it's kind of like a movie director, except I look over multiple projects. I get to make the teams, I get to start the projects, I get to help to have those first ideas, and then they become the attractions that you'll see in the parks. It's wonderful. It's a great job. Over the course of my time at Disney, I've done multiple things like Mission Space, Spaceship Earth, Space Mountain, and a lot of blue sky. But also, about 12 years ago, I had an opportunity to create a brand new adventure land for Shanghai Disneyland. And that project was so exciting. We had so many ideas that it really became two lands. It became Adventure Isle, and it became Treasure Cove, a land set entirely into the world of Pirates of the Caribbean, which was really amazing, with 5 attractions, a boat ride like there is no other in the world. So that was certainly one reason I thought of doing Pirates, but really for this I wanted to go back to what were some very strong memories for me, going to see and ride Pirates of the Caribbean with my kids, and just enjoy the details, but also kind of sort of rediscover and feel what is in this attraction, which is a really great combination of what is real but also magical, and what's kind of scary but always a little bit of funny as well. When Pirates existed, the maps of the world weren't complete, so for every blank spot there was a legend, there was a myth, there was something that somebody invented to fill it up, until explorers and scientists and people like that went to those places, and it was discovered what was there, and it was equally fantastic. It was just different, right? But I love that period where it's not known, so the real and the magical cohabitate all the time, so you can wind up looking for something like the Fountain of Youth, or you can be out trying to find magical treasure at the bottom of the ocean, because nobody really knows what's there. No one had been past those frontiers then. So I really love that. I look at drawings, and I do drawings because they tell stories, and I love drawing because drawing is a way to set up the world and set up the stories you're going to tell. So now we have to color it. That'll go pretty quickly. I had shown you this before. That's what it's going to look like.
not very difficult. So we're going to start with some grays for the octopus here. And so I'm going to put some gray here, but pretty quick and pretty light. And I'm putting it on one side of the tentacle again, the side away from the light, you know, the sun, because that makes it easier. I don't want to plug up the drawing by putting tons and tons of shade in it. Although I can shade the ones that are behind. That makes sense that they would be a little bit darker. And then we're going to put some dark under the eyebrows because it makes it look a little bit more, you know, ill-tempered. And then we're going to come around. Now let's do the underwater passage here. Let's see what we can do with that. All right, there's going to be, I want to use something cool. All right. Yeah, I think I can use this. All right. Just the top of it here, because that rounds away from us. Right, like that. I'm going to make the mouth pretty dark, because it would feel that way to people coming into it. And then, of course, this on top is darker, the top of the cave here. Okay, there we go. Let's do the treasure, which I think is this guy here. All right, so treasure. Here, here, here. And then this treasure. I'm going to make this whole box gold because it stands out more. I like that. And then the brown of the treasure chest here, like that. And I'm going to leave this part not colored there because it makes it seem like it gets more light. And let's get on the ship and the dinghy. All right. And then the same thing here. I'm trying to leave brown out of the windows. The hull, right? So I come here, clean up the front here. Okay. And then we got to do the brown in this area. So I'm going to put brown over the whole thing, including the Canon portholes, because it's dark in there, so you don't really need to. And then I'm going to do the masts. For the masts, I'm using the straight edge because that makes it cleaner. So I put this mast in front of the sails. I could have also drawn the mast behind the sails, because the reality is those sails on those booms, they could turn. They could turn them, you know, a little bit in each direction to catch the wind, so that the wind didn't have to be exactly behind the ship. So you could draw them, you know, either in front or behind, according to whether they're turned this way or that. But I decided to do it this way, just because that way the masts look more complete. It's a little nicer to me. Crow's nests and the booms. I'm gonna have to make sure I don't put my head into the camera. And then we're gonna just put a little bit of brown in this area as if it was in between the gold areas, but it's okay to leave some white. It's all right if this stuff is not exactly perfect, because I don't want to just plug it up with color. Just leaving room enough for the gold. Same thing here. All right, so now we're going to put gold in these details, right? This marker is a little dirty. It keeps kind of picking up some black. The light, of course, is gold, but it's shining from the inside, so I'm not going to color the whole thing. And then this here, same thing, you know. So, and then I got this long gold piece here. So I really like the sails being striped. That's a choice. You can leave your sails white and just add a little bit of gray shading. You could make your sails black. Some ships had black sails. Some ships had all red sails also. But I like the striped sails, which were on some ships in the parks. Just something really cool about it. So it's a little kind of, I don't say it's happier because they are pirates, but but it's something kind of more, I guess more festive. And certainly makes the drawing a lot more interesting to me. So that's why I use those here. Okay, now this pirate is very color coordinated, and I like the idea that the captain is sporting the the team colors of his sails. And what I'm going to do here is many ships would have colors on them. It didn't seem, we think of them as brown because they're made out of wood, but many ships had colors on them. So I'm actually going to put some red on top of the brown here because I think it makes that middle part of the ship look really interesting. And then just over this area here, again, I'm going to go right over the Canon Ports. If you really like, you can go back and color the inside of the Canon Ports black. I'm not going to bother doing that. All right, there we are. Now let's quickly get over all the other folks and a few of the details. So, this couple of flags. Again, they could be any color. Let's hit a few things here. Let's do the water. So the water. This marker is not the best here for that, but we're going to make it work. Because it's a little bit dried up. But we're going to go slow and hopefully that'll work. And again. I'm not going to fill the entire thing up because that seems a little bit overdoing it. I'm just going to go like a little bit. For the beach, I have a little pinkish color here that we're just going to bring across here like that. I'm also going to use that as a skin color because I don't have very many colors to use for that. And this is very small, so it's hard to be precise. So I don't want to plug it up. So I'm just using that lightly. But I do want the pirates to be also different shades because I don't think that they came from everywhere, right? So yeah. So she's gonna be more like this, and we have a real international crew here because that's how it went in the Caribbean. All right. So then the pants. There we go. Brown, and of course the turkey leg, why not? I think she's got brown pants as well. There we go. And what color clothes does he have? Or yeah, he's sleeping there. I think he likes to dress. Let's move on to the trees and the plants. So these are celery color. That's the color I like. A nicer kind of leafier green. There we go. That's out here. I'm just going to put a little bit in here. It doesn't need to be exact. You don't need to follow the lines. Just to say that there's something in there. There we go. And of course the trunks are a certain color. Let's see. What am I going to do for the trunks? I kind of like the idea of these. Yeah. I think that's not too dark. All right, and we need to put a little bit more rock surrounding these folks back here, right? Because that's what's all around them up there. And then back here. When I said I would put a little bit of yellow over the flame here. There we go. We have fire. And it kind of feels like I could add a little bit more tint here, just a little bit more dark, just to sit them down. Pretty good. This is warm. Oh, one more thing, right? Now the sky. The sky, I don't have a color that is the right color for the sky, and it'd be really hard to draw between everything to put some blue underneath everything. But as I was experimenting, I saw that one thing I could do was to just use some of this pretty bright blue behind the paper and let it show through. And so that's one way that you can kind of sort of make up for what you don't have. And I can even draw, over the sails in some areas, because it's not going to turn out to be very opaque. So I'm just kind of catching this, but I do want to leave the clouds white underneath, because that's going to make them pop just a little bit. Now you need to test that first with your paper to see if that's actually going to work on your paper, because if your paper bleeds right through, then that may not be so good. And all it does is it just puts a little bit of shade back there, which makes the clouds pop a little bit. So you should check that first, because if you're using some paper that bleeds through really a lot, then this color may just come through and destroy everything that's underneath. So I just want to be careful. But I think we got it here. All we need to do is to sign it, because you should always sign your work. So we're going to sign it here. And today's the 6th. All right, I always put a date. There you go. And that is our picture. Now you can go anywhere with this, right? So you can definitely take this picture and change it around. You can make things, different. You can change the number of palm trees where they are. You could add a fortress up here. You could add a sea battle on that side. You can keep going in a direction. You can have, instead of this sea monster, you could have some other sea monsters. I was actually looking into this, and there are some very interesting other sea monsters. Some that were a combination of a lion's face and, like a goat's feet and like a fish body. Some of them are just giant fish that look like they're kind of almost like piranhas, or like you could do like a giant nautilus. Those are very interesting. They're beautiful, but they're kind of scary, because they have this shell and then these just these couple of eyes on the sides kind of sunken in. Very interesting. Now I said when we started that for me drawings are really fun to do, but they're also a great way to tell stories. And so I'm going to show you how I would take this and then start adding on to it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this drawing and I'm going to redraw it just a little smaller on a bigger piece of paper, so there's more room for stories. All right, let's get started. So you see I've just done it here with, instead of markers, I used grayscale, because that way that's easier to shade later. So what does that mean is I just drew with the same pen as before. I shaded it with a pencil, and then I used a stump. The stump is it's a fancy name for basically the same thing as a wadded up piece of tissue paper. So it works the same. It's just that, when you're a professional artist, you have to use fancy stuff. Anyways, and then what's good about that is you can also erase the parts that you don't want. So I can use this eraser, or I can use a regular eraser, like everybody has. And so let's get going. So here's what I'm going to do. What I want to do is, I thought this was cool that these pirates are kind of in this little cove next to a tiny island. But then I thought, what if actually they're in a protective cove, but they're really kind of as a big storm, and actually it's gray and it's kind of it's kind of windy, so they're actually sheltering here, and on this side is going to be, in a storm, a big ship battle. So there's going to be a battle, and then under the battle at the bottom, because there's big shoals here, there's like, all these rocks that are protecting this little, little bay. That's where ships come to crash, and so there's like all these, these shipwrecks at the bottom of the ocean here. So that's going to be fun. And then above that, they're fighting, which means that there could be more shipwrecks later, right? So there's that over here. And then I thought, on this side, when I was drawing it, I thought of it as a tiny island, but what if it's just a little bit bigger and there's actually a fort there? So now there's going to be a fort on that side with another ship attacking the fort. So now it's like a battle between a fort and that. And then underneath the fort, there's going to be a secret cave that has a little mini harbor in it, like a little dock, so that you can actually evacuate or bring like treasures into the big the castle, the fort there. All right, let's get going. All right, so on this side, we're going to be drawing the bottom of the ocean first. And so there's rocks here that create this like big, dangerous obstacle that you might run into. As a ship, as you drift, maybe you lose control of your sail or something, or the wind is too strong and you just can't stop, and then you wind up hitting all that stuff. Terrible. And then at the bottom here, there's more of this, rocks and stuff. So I finished the drawing where I added all the stories. I'll just talk you through it because it's really fun, right? For me anyways. So what we have now is, of course, a big sea battle right over here. So this one is all about these two ships are coming after each other. They're over a graveyard of ships. So there's been other battles here, and also the ships run into these shoals, these rocks that are there. Those rocks are actually protecting this little bay here. And because it's a big storm over there, these guys don't really know that they're over there. Of course, that distance could be bigger. So they think they're really safe, and they're having a little barbecue. They're always looking for treasure, but of course treasure is right there. They don't know it's there in the little cave, but also down at the bottom of the ocean. They also don't know that there's an uninvited party who's watching them. Of course, from the standpoint of the giant octopus, they're the uninvited party. So something could happen here. It could be interesting. There could be treasure in here as well, you would expect, right? All that stuff sank at the bottom of the ocean. You see the stern of one ship, and then the prow of another, and all these things. So that's kind of interesting. Now, these people, initially I thought this was going to be just an island that was a tiny one, right, where nobody else lives. But maybe right behind all this, it's actually kind of a big hill that goes up, and in the distance is a fortress. Now, this fortress, I decided would be a fortress that the English have. And it's under attack from another ship. Now this one is a brigantine. It's got a different kind of sail. It's got a different back. Those are smaller ships, and actually that's more what the pirates used to use, from what I read anyways. But in there I tried to get out all kinds of things, right? So there's like little staircases to get up to the upper, upper fort, or the big, dungeon there. And then at the top there's a little turret from which they can look out. And then cannons up there as well. But there's also a lower level to the fortress with a little observation turret. They had these things kind of hanging out there, the Spanish style. So this fortress might have been Spanish before the English were there. Of course, they're firing their cannons there, and they're firing their cannons. They're throwing stuff, maybe with mortars or something else. There's a little dock outside with a little ship, little dinghy waiting to go there, has its sail out. There's also a secret little kind of mini harbor, a little dock inside, and I think this guy here is getting ready to escape. Maybe he's going to steal the gold and the treasures that are in there and just run off, because clearly these guys are under attack and there might be more ships coming later. But then that, the bottom drops off really sharp there, and it's really interesting to think what it would be like, in there. Now the way to get from this, inner cave might be through the front, but that's hidden by the bushes there and these little plants that are kind of really fanning out. And then this opening is actually probably a cave or a cavern that just kind of like, or maybe something they cut into the rock to get across from place to place that might connect for this level and then come out here and go up there. So this is kind of all the little stories that are happening there. I could have added more people here. You see there's actually a bunch of pirates on this one, kind of, you know, looking over and fighting. There's a guy in the crow's nest who's actually pointing at you know, what the other guys are going to be doing pretty soon. So you kind of layer it, and to me that's really fun, you know, designing all these places that people can be in, that can have adventures, and it can go on, right? So you can keep spreading it out. It's like a fun map. You can kind of just have it everywhere. So I love that part. For me, you know, telling a story is about being in a place. It's about seeing what's happened before, what could happen in the future, what you could do yourself, and then of course what the characters are doing right when you're there. That makes it even more alive. So that's kind of the secret for me of drawing these things. I'm always playing the movie in my head as it's happening. So thank you very much for sitting through this and you know, taking my little trip to the pirates world and lands. There's little bits of all the theme parks and all of these, and that's what I miss, like all of you. And so I hope someday we meet somewhere in Adventureland or in Treasure Cove in Shanghai, and live a great pirate adventure. Thanks. Bye-bye.